Greetings, loved ones. As we continue to work our way through the Gospel of John, I invite you to close your eyes now and picture in your mind a grapevine. And on this grapevine, there are 1,000 branches. And on each branch, there are 1,000 clusters of grapes. You see it? And on each cluster, there are 1,000 grapes. I know. This sounds like a strange kind of grapevine, doesn't it? It's kind of fantastical. But what would you think if I also told you that if you were to try to pick just one grape from this fantastical cluster, you wouldn't be able to do it yourself because each grape is large enough to produce 120 gallons of wine. Each grape. It sounds ludicrous, doesn't it? You can open your eyes now if you had them closed. Well, believe it or not, this very image comes from the second book of Baruch. Baruch was a prophet who, according to tradition, was a friend of Jeremiah, the prophet, about 600 years before the time of Jesus. In 2 Baruch 29:5, Baruch describes what the world will be like when the Messiah comes. And here's what that verse says. The earth also shall yield its fruit 10,000-fold, and on each vine there shall be 1,000 branches, and each branch shall produce 1,000 clusters, and each cluster shall produce 1,000 grapes, and each grape shall produce 120 gallons of wine. Well, in John chapter 2, verses 1 through 11, our text for today, Baruch's vision comes to life as Jesus makes a remarkable new batch of wine by filling 6 huge 20-gallon jars with water for a grand total of, you guessed it, 120 gallons. The same amount that was mentioned in Baruch's prophecy. And just imagine the surprise of the servants when they drew out that first cup, expecting water but getting wine instead. The text tells us that it was Jesus' first miraculous sign. Now, that word sign is important. A sign is something that points to something greater on the horizon. The water turned to wine is just a sign, really, because Jesus, who will later reveal to us that he is in fact the vine, plays the part of a single grape in Baruch's vision. It's as if Jesus intended this sign to merely pique our curiosity about just what else might be in store for us as we join ourselves to him like branches on the vine. If this is what a single grape can do, just imagine what a cluster can do. Just imagine what a branch can do. Just imagine what the vine can do. Yes, just imagine. Let us just imagine. By and large, that is what the church in our society today is lacking. I am sad to say. We are suffering from a failure of imagination as to who we can be and how we may live the shape that we are free to take. In the other Gospels, Jesus addresses this when he explains that new wine requires new wineskins. If you try to pour new wine into old skins, the old skins that are brittle and shrunken with age will burst as the skin expands to accommodate the gases that are created in the fermentation process. A new way of being is here, Jesus says. So we need new ways of carrying the new life. We need a new way of being that is expansive, that will allow room for the new wine to mature. Jeremiah the prophet foretold this. We can read about it in chapter 13 of his book, where the offices of prophet, priest, and king are represented as three different wineskins. In Jeremiah's vision, the wineskins crash into one another and bust open. Now, hundreds of years after Jeremiah's vision, Jesus enters the scene, and that is what he does. The whole prophet, priest, king system comes crashing down as Jesus, the vine source of the wine itself, embodies all three roles at once. Jesus himself thus becomes the new wine in the new wineskin. He is the all in all. In today's text, this new system-smashing reality is demonstrated by the fact that Jesus uses ceremonial washing containers to perform his miraculous sign. The old way will no longer be needed because the new wine will offer all, as it says in the story, the best there is, which is what the master of the wedding banquet notes in the story today. The failure of the church in our society today is that we sometimes act as if this new winemaking is no longer happening, but God is still today doing a new thing. Indeed, author and theologian Phyllis Tickle says that about every 500 years or so, the church has a kind of rummage sale where we let go of the old ways of being so that we may have room for a new work of God. The last major rummage sale was, of course, about 500 years ago in the time of the Reformation. And we just happen to be living during a time in history in which a whole new reformation is taking place as the church comes to grips with its post-colonial, post-modern, and post-Christendom context. So the need for new wineskins is not over. Far from it. In other words, we need to imagine new ways of what it could look like to be the people of God in our society today. That's why I'm so hopeful when I think about our quirky little PlayWell community. Even though we are few in number, we are essentially rehearsing the possibility of a renewed vision for what it means to be the church in our society today. For far too long, the church in America has settled for formulas and forms that are merely comfortable. But the good news is God will not be kept in our tidy little church boxes. In fact, if Jesus were here today as he was 2,000 years ago, he would perform acts that most churchgoers in America today would regard as sacrilegious and heretical. He would use our sacred jars to serve the best wine and throw the best parties. And if we were to just be as the servants in today's story, we would be awakened to the signs of God's presence and activity in all kinds of surprising ways and in all kinds of places like homes and bars and parks and shelters and forest preserves and food pantries, far outside the set-apart sacred spaces we tend to think of as church. As author Barbara Holmes puts it in her book on contemplative practices in the Black church called Joy Unspeakable, she says, contemplation is not confined to designated and institutional sacred spaces. God breaks into nightclubs. Beloved friends, let us live out our faith in ways that point to the continual work of renewal that God is still doing today at all times, in all places, for all people. And let us be as the servants in today's story who simply followed the simple instructions of Jesus' mother when she told them, do whatever he tells you. May we have the courage to just do whatever he tells us, even if it seems abnormal, strange, and new. We just may find something surprising in the process of it all, like a vine growing in the wild with 1,000 branches that have 1,000 clusters, that have 1,000 grapes, that produce wine without limit. Just imagine it. Yes, let us just imagine it. Amen and amen.